Good evening, everybody. Thank you very, very much for taking the time out to register and come on with us tonight. My own name is Lizzie Flynn. I'm a National Development Officer with the Ladies Gaelic Football Association. I have with me tonight, and we're hoping to have a fantastic discussion with these very experienced referees. We have Brendan Rice, Shane Curley, and Angela Gallagher, who are all national referees. So I suppose tonight, guys, the pressure is going to be on you. My job is just to facilitate questions that have come in. And I suppose 4 key areas have come in, so we're going to focus on those. I would suggest if people have questions to please pop them in the Q&A function for me. And if we don't get to them during it, we'll certainly try and save time at the end. So look, the first topic that came in for a number of people, and that was around about keeping track of noting of players in terms of persistent fouling. So I suppose, Brendan, you're kind of on my screen first. So if you don't mind, would you mind coming in on that and maybe just taking us through how you yourself keep track of that?
Yeah, well, it's basically with the noting, you have the facility in your wallet, in your match card, and I suppose it's yourself, and that you deeming whether the foul is a notable foul. And it's what I would do now is just each number, there's a number, there's a box, so I would circle my first note, so that all the first notes, so if anybody's on a first note, the number's circled to that team, and I would let them know that they've been noted. Very not out loud, just to say that's a note, that's a tick, or whatever. Same with the second one, then I would tick them. So I would see a circle and a tick. So anytime looking at it, then I can, once I see one tick, I know then that player's double, they're on 2, and I will again let them know. I suppose the big thing is what is the note and foul and what's not. And the other big thing, and I'm sure Shane and Angela, they'll come in on this, I think the big problem, the big thing is, and it's probably a lot easier when you're on national because you've got officials with you, you've got a sideline official, lines people, and we're all hooked up, is when there's an advantage. And particularly if you're on your own in a club game and you call advantage to a foul and you follow the ball. And that is one of the biggest things that I know I fall down in it, is remembering to tick the player after you've called advantage. So that is one of the sort of ones I know I've fallen down on it, and I know when I've got assessment reports, I fail to note certain players, and I'd be sitting racking my head going, where have I missed? And that's where a lot of it came from, was playing advantage and forgetting maybe who actually made the foul, knowing it was the red team, but not knowing it was red 5. But I think the good thing too is letting players know, because the last thing you want is when you give the third foul and the player standing in front of you, the girl's going, why, when did I get my first 2 notes? So that is a big part of the game, is definitely keeping players informed, particularly when they're on 2, because the last thing you want is a wee pull of the jersey and you're given the third one and they don't know they're already on 2. So that's just a couple of wee pointers that I know myself, but definitely that advantage one is definitely one to keep an eye on.
Brilliant, and thanks. Shane, I'll put a spotlight on you maybe for a minute, and Angela's getting off easy at the moment. Is there anything, Shane, maybe that you'd like to come in on there from your own point of view, from a practical point of view of noting there, or maybe as a follow-on from Brendan?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting one, Brendan. Everybody will have their own style, even in the line of scorekeeping. But look, I just tick in the actual box. I know it's quite small in the little insert. I like the way Brendan mentions there about circling the number first for his first tick, and that's something that he's used to. I'm used to just ticking, beside the actual place for the name, and then seeing the second tick right beside it. But I'll also contribute to that particular area of the advantage. That's an area, all right, I think all referees will fall down on, and especially us that are being assessed. It's very, very tricky. I try to get into the habit of, if it's red team and green team, if the red team has fouled and it's number 7 and you're playing the advantage, if they're within close distance, you'll play the advantage and you go, that's a tick, number 7. I'll try and keep it in my mind as the play is going on, red number 7, red number 7, red number 7. But you will eventually, you'll get caught out, you know, and you will forget it at times.
And I think a lot of the referees, Brendan mentioned, but like a lot of the referees are on tonight, are refereeing at club level. So as Brendan said, a lot of them may not be mic'd up, or they may not have the assistance of having a full team of officials, which I suppose can be a challenge. And I suppose it is probably the practice of trying to.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I suppose the worst thing that could happen is that you blow for every single foul and the game is just stopped nearly the whole match. Stop, start, stop, start. The advantage is brilliant. You know, there's a flow to the game, but it's trying to get that balance between getting the tick and making sure that the foul doesn't go unpunished. So that's one of the things that you have to try and master. You're going to forget some of them. There's no point in saying that you're going to get them all right, because you're not. The game, you know, the ball could be kicked in 45 meters and the foul has happened, and you'll be trying to remember something, and next thing the girl is on one-on-one with the goalkeeper and she scores a goal, and you know, there's so much going on that, you know, you just might have forgotten to tick. But it is important.
We are humans also.
Yeah, absolutely. But definitely, as Brendan said, you know, to tell them, you know, that they are ticked. I mean, look, lucky for them if they get away, and you know, but certainly keep telling them anyway that they are ticked. It's good practice.
And Angela, I might throw this one at you. We had a really good question in there from Patrick. Patrick was just wondering, you might just need to mute yourself there. Was just asking, like, as a referee yourself, would you maybe at halftime use it as an opportunity to, you know, say to a player who's on, you know, 2 ticks, or maybe even the team themselves, or would you have particular practice that you'd use yourself, Angela?
Yeah, like coming that question, more than likely, I think the managers themselves are in the habit now of coming up to you at halftime. That's what I found the last couple of years. So they will come over and check how many players have on their tick. So it is a good opportunity. Normally I don't have to go to them, they will come to me and check. And just picking up what the lads were saying there with regards to keeping the number in your head is huge. And even if you are going to take them, I find that I've always, and very often now, and this is stuff I've had to learn over the years, when the foul happens, you call it out straight away and you call it what it is. And the player will actually look at you and go, right, okay, I know that's against me. It usually brings down the amount of controversy that may happen. And once it's clear what's happened, once you call out the number of their jersey, it's a really good way of remembering who has done it and then that they need to be ticked. I've also started before the match starts or at the toss, that I will explain that process to the captains and that I will leave it with them on the pitch to control. So I'll say to them, once one of your players get to 2 tick-ins, I will let them know, but I also let the captain know.
Brilliant. So
I will let them take it from there. I said it will just help me reduce what yellow cards I'm giving out if you can control it from there.
And that's really, really good practical advice, really good. And communication is absolutely massive. And you've mentioned it there, which brings me nicely on to my next question. So I'll stay with you, Angela, if that's okay. And that's around, I suppose, a player comes to a 3rd tick, and around, I think, the importance of signalling now so that everybody is aware, I suppose, why a player may be getting sin binned, or that, you know, players coming off. And so just maybe, could you talk maybe about the importance of signaling, particularly not just for the players, but for actually the management and maybe spectators at a game?
I mean, communication is huge, and you will see straight away that the players will listen to you and respect that you've actually told them where they've gone wrong, what has happened. And it's funny, my brother down in Sligo is a manager, and I've spoken to him a good bit about this, about communication from the referee, and he said he finds particularly helpful that when he knows exactly what the player has done, that they can appreciate and go, fair enough. If there's no communication, everyone's in limbo going, what's actually gone on? Why did they get that card? Why did they get called for a foul? So it's funny hearing it from both sides. So yeah, it's very, very, and we have the signals. So it's important for us to use them and make it very clear to everybody why you're calling the foul.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I might go back to Shane, then on, if that's okay, Shane, with you. And I was just going to talk, we were talking there, Brenda was the first one to mention it, and that was around, you know, maybe at national level yourselves, you're mic'd up and you can talk to your team of officials. But actually for people at club level, and it can be, I'm sure if you think back just a few years ago when you started, you know, what it was like trying to build a team of officials. So if you had any advice there, maybe Shane, if you want to kick this off yourself, advice you have on trying to build a team of officials in terms of their umpires.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that sometimes you're lucky if you can get any umpire or a lines person or anybody to help you at a club game. And that's been, I think we'll all agree that we've all started off there. How did I manage to get people involved? Just had to pick up the phone and ring them, you know, maybe just see who might have been involved in the club in the ladies section and see would they come along and do an umpire for you. But you know, you really have to kind of pinpoint them. You can try and get maybe from my point of view, I played football for years. I might like to have some of the lads that I played football with, but then I know in my heart and soul that they're going to be playing football more than likely when the girls' games are going to be on. So they're of no great value. So to try and find people, it can be difficult. But start with people that are interested, that you think are interested, and build it from there. You know, start off with a couple of umpires, start bringing them to matches, and yeah, that's how it started for me. I just went, I kind of got a piece of paper one night, started writing down names. I had about 20 on the list. I ended up with 4, and those 4 are still with me. So, you know, that's just the way you keep going around the village, around the houses, and pick up the phone and just ask them. That's really it. Or you might meet somebody at a match, you know, your own local club team, and they could be very good supporters of the local club team, and you might just say, you know, would you be interested in coming to a game with me every so often? And, you know, we won't get you every week, but see how you like it. And that has worked too.
Sorry, I was having a bit of difficulty there. Just on that as well, myself and Angela were actually on a training event there last week, and you know, the discussion came up actually around this, and I suppose it came in again, I suppose, in the questions prior to the webinar, and this was, so it's obviously a huge thing at club level trying to build a pool of people. And I know, I suppose, Shane, would you have found yourself over time that maybe not everybody was suited to it, maybe people are used to the men's game, and do you give people a chance, or would you advise them to come to training? Or I suppose what would be your own experience really with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of them are certainly not suited. I got about 14 umpires trained up on the last session with the ladies' rules. And realistically, you know, between 6 and 8 of those are the regular ones. There's 3 or 4 that haven't come to a match in 2 years, just haven't been able for whatever reason. But they did honor me with doing the actual course itself. And, you know, they thought that we might be able to get 1 game, but unfortunately it didn't work out. You know, and even some of them came back and did the course the following 2 years and still weren't able to do any match. So it can be very tricky, as I say. It's trying to find that balance. You just, I suppose, you kind of get a feeling for the people that go to matches and like sport and like ladies football. I think that was the big thing for me. I kind of honed in on that. I honed in on the people that go to the ladies football matches. Lots of people go to the lads games. That's a definite. But to try and find people that like ladies football and would be comfortable standing beside a post, I think that was, you know, had to kind of gear it that way.
Yeah, brilliant. Brendan, I might maybe bring you back in there again then. I suppose maybe if there was anything you wanted to add in there in terms of your own experience of trying to build a team of maybe umpires, whether you've a similar experience to Shane or whether you've anything else to add maybe. And you aren't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's similar in a way to Shane. You know, you've got to get yourself a good team of people around you. A lot of my umpires would actually be friends of mine. So when I started out first, a bit like what Shane was saying, when I got onto the national panel, you definitely needed your umpires because you had to have them every game you went. It was really only when you were at home, it was a championship games. It was a necessity. But I sort of built up nearly a group of 8, and there was always a main 4, but you were never going to get the main 4 out. There might have been one away. Like I know, for example, this week I have the Ulster Ladies Senior Final, and 3 of my regular umpires thought it was a good idea to book tickets to go and watch Glasgow Celtic against, I don't know who they're playing this weekend, but the 3 of them are in Glasgow when I need them in Derry this weekend. But that's what happens. So I would have a pool of about 8, but what we have at home, there's myself. I have one of my umpires is an Ulster men's referee. So he would use my group of umpires as well. And then I have another young fella who would referee. He is in the ladies. He's actually in the trying to get into the panel at the moment. And he would have a few umpires himself. So we nearly have a pool of around 10, nearly 12 umpires. So we'll have, and that we use, so that if, for talk's sake, if 2 of us were out on the one day, there's nearly enough umpires to get around. So it's another way of trying to build up a bit of a pool, is if you have fellow referees who have a couple of umpires as well, and bringing them in together, and that they've all umpired. Even, and I know Shane's mentioned about a lot of them are interested in the men's, but you know, as long as they have and have done their training and know the difference in the subtle difference in rules in men's and ladies football, they'd be well equipped to umpire the ladies. So it is a matter of, you know, you will have to start probably with your social circle, and or within, or even your club circle, and build from there. But you definitely, if you can build up more than 4, it would definitely help when they decide to go to watch Celtic.
Yeah, a very basic question to ask, right? I suppose because you're refereeing a little while now, Brendan, but just, I suppose, what support do you expect to get from your 4 umpires? So, like, would you have a team talk with them? You know, because no matter how long you have a pool of umpires, I presume you need to be fairly rigid in terms of making sure there's no day you don't talk to them in terms of, this is what I expect today. Maybe could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, we would, even though they would be very, you know, they've been with, in fact, 2 of the umpires have been with me from 2013. So I've had them now, this is the end of my, 10th season then at National, and 2 of them have been there from day 1. And regardless, I would still go through the same sort of talk, what I would expect, what to look out for, what I would look for them to signal or call in, or a lot of the stuff, and even to the lines people, I would talk about being proactive rather than reactive, so that if they see wee small things, to act on them before they get out of hand. So if there is a wee bit of pulling of a jersey, or a cornerback looking at the forward rather than the play, to either use the goalkeeper or just to say, you know, red 2, keep your eyes on the play, or we'll call the referee and sort of thing. So a lot of it is, you know, and the more experience they get, naturally it's sort of second nature to them. But even before every game, I'll still go through what I would expect the, you know, my umpires to be looking out for, and my lines people. And if you were lucky to have a 4th official, to, you know, go through sort of through just wee roles, what you expect on the line for the 4th official, what you expect your lines people to be doing, maybe coming in, marking frees for you, looking out, and the same thing, looking out for wee small things that are happening that they could deal with, that can be sorted out without having the referee, or as Shane has said, about maybe stopping the game, for the wee things that can be sorted out very quickly. But again, yes, regardless, and like I've worked with Shane, I've worked with Angela, and regardless, if we all know each other well and know each other's game, you'll still explain before going out, so everybody's very clear on the roles and how you like them carried out.
Yeah. And then maybe just one more, maybe before we move on, Brendan, like the reality for, I would say, probably 90 or 95% of the people that we have tonight, they could turn around, they've built up a pool of maybe umpires, and then comes weekend and they've only 2 they can bring with them. Your advice there, would you try and have one either end and bring in two other people, or what would you, I suppose, if you're bringing in two other people, what would be, I suppose, your communication with your team then at that point?
Yeah. Well, funny said, I've messaged 3 fellow referees to see what they're doing this Sunday. That would be one thing I would do. If my main group of umpires weren't available and I couldn't, or I would even ask, for talk's sake, a fellow referee, is any of your umpires, because I know then they'd have been experienced if any of their umpires are available. So looking at my fellow referees, maybe you may have your own club referee or a neighbouring club who you'd be friendly with, or otherwise go to a fellow referee that, you know, like for talk's sake, if Shane was living in Down, maybe half an hour away from me, I would say, Shane, are you doing anything this weekend? Do you fancy coming? And usually, you know, those fellow referees totally understand the predicament of getting umpires. And I know I've umpired for a fellow referee, Shane, and I also know Gavin Finnegan. I've gone off, he in the same predicament, may have lost 2 due to people away, and I would gladly go. I wouldn't see anybody stuck. So, you know, if you're losing out on your main team, don't be afraid to even ask fellow referees, because they'll always be able to help or even try and get you somebody.
Brilliant. Angela or Shane, was there anything else there maybe that you'd like to add in there to maybe to what Brendan has already kind of said, or anything that came up there?
Yeah, I'll come in there, Lizzie. Just we were chatting again the other night on a different topic about, and this came up about umpires, and what people may come up against is they may not be actually living at home. They may not be near their own club, which I found myself where I'm a good bit from home. I'm from Sligo, so I was living up in Dublin, and it's different when you're at home. You can go to your local club. You have known players over the years. You have your family, you have cousins. So if you find yourself in that predicament, I went to my own local club where I'm living first and started there. But I started with the women's team, and I spoke to them and just asked them would I be interested in coming on board, and I actually ended up getting a few umpires that way. The girls themselves were interested to see, but they were more, what they found was they were playing at club level and suddenly realized they could be involved at national level. And they were quite excited about it, actually, to see the other side of been watching the county teams be actually involved on the other side. So I found that to be quite a good way to get people involved. And again, what Shane said earlier, it's about a matter of literally just asking people, and you'll be surprised, or chatting when you're on a night out, and whichever think of umpiring, and hitting older players, past players that may be out of the game for a while, would you be interested in coming back in? So the main thing I find with umpires is that they need to be confident to call something for you, so that if you do need to go in and speak to them, that you can nearly rely on them a little bit and go, did you see that number? Or so it's things like that the umpires will be watching out for, that you need to tell them and explain before, and things like square ball, just to keep them tuned in on the game, that they know what they're looking for, to line out exactly what they're looking for, but that they have the confidence, and that if you overrule them every now and then, that it's okay, that they're able to take that. And you're surprised some people don't and they get annoyed, but it's certain things you have to thrash out before that comes into play, that these are things may happen, but you're working as a team and it's for the better of the game when you're all working together. So if something is wrong or someone makes a mistake, it's all right, that it doesn't matter. So that's a few things that have come up for me over the years anyway.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Lizzie, I just see Jason put in a wee comment, or a wee question there about costing. You know, I just see there. It probably will, and Shane and Angela probably say in the games that we would do, particularly at national or provincial, yes, there would be a bit of food, a few pints through in, and that, but that wouldn't be. It definitely wouldn't happen at club level. You know, the team of umpires would know that at club level they're coming along and doing the game as such. Maybe when it's provincial and national, yes, there is a bit of food in that there, and unfortunately at times it may cost you £1 or £2, but you know, I suppose what Angela was saying there, when you are up at that national level, it maybe is a wee bit easier in getting umpires because they are and look to see those bigger games and inter-county games. But yeah, it might cost a wee pound or two to keep your umpire sweet, unfortunately.
Yeah. Just in terms of, I suppose, I know we spoke last week, Angela, myself and the group that we had, and I suppose there's things I see from my own father umpires quite a bit. My family very steeped in the GA, like yourselves, and sometimes it's getting the he's lucky enough that he gets mass pass into all the games, hurling games, everything in the county, and he umpires for a couple of people. There may be a bit of a night out, at the end of the year. And I think that's probably something that maybe our own county boards could possibly look into if they're not doing. I'm not sure what's out there among some counties, but having something like that, and maybe your umpires that you're trying to develop, maybe they won't go to that many games, but it's lovely to have a little bit of a gesture. But that's my own twopence on that as well. I'm gonna just move on.
A couple of things there, Lizzie.
Great, yeah.
I was just looking at the questions and answers there as well, just while you were chatting, and there were two there that I'll just bring in quickly. What's your thoughts on officials, especially referees, using first names in games instead of jersey number? This is just me. I never use a player's name, ever. It's always red number 7, green number 5, except even no matter how well I know them, because the last thing you want is somebody coming along in the middle of a match saying, come on, ref, you're calling them by name. You're not going to know everybody's names. That's just me. And in terms of if you had only, one of your own umpires at each half, would you call in 2 neutral ones from either side? Yes, I have done that. And in both cases, there are times that I would prefer just to use my own 2, one at either end. You just have to get a feel for that yourself. It's always good to have all 4 corners, matched up if you can at all. But as I say, that's a preferential thing. I've used both. But remember that if you are using 2 neutral umpires, they are actual officials. So I would tell them, you can't be coaching the girls from the corner of the post. They're telling the goalkeeper how to kick it out. They're telling the corner back to run this way, and you're just getting a running commentary the whole game. Just tell them to respect the job that they have, and everything is okay.
Fantastic, brilliant. Again, for me, a common theme throughout the 2 or 3 topics so far is around, the importance of communication, whether that's, with your match officials, but it's the players in terms of notings. And again, with particularly with people maybe who are not maybe neutral for ourselves. So look, the next thing I touch on is the high tackle, because that came in from a couple of people. So Brendan, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot there. If that's okay. And I suppose looking at the high tackle, it being, I suppose, above the chest in ladies football. So do you mind maybe just kind of maybe touching on that again? I would just say as well, Brendan, 1 second, is like there's loads of questions coming in. If we don't answer them straight away, we will certainly try and get to them at the end. So we'll try and kind of keep them on topic. But if there's something that maybe sparks a thought in your head, please pop it in and we'll do our best to get to it either during it or at the end of the session.
Yeah, I would say I would say the other two guys will nearly agree. The high tackle is probably, bar the 3 noting to get a yellow card, the high tackle is probably the highest number. It would be the biggest yellow carded foul that we're probably dealing with. The whole crux, and again, it's an on the spot decision of whether it's a high tackle or a deliberate high tackle. I must admit, most high tackles now that occur in games are due to clumsy tackling. So it is where an arm has gone in. The intention is to play the ball, but they don't get the ball, and the arm does come across and catches a player above the chest, and it probably is the biggest culprit in yellow cards. You as a referee, you have that, when you see it, you've got to decide there and then, was that a high tackle or was it not? If you let it slide, are you letting them all slide? You know, that's the predicament you're in. I think what you should be is be very consistent. Should it be one in the first minute? It's in the first minute. I know myself. I think it was Armagh and Cavan last year, and I think there was 3 Cavan girls all went off in the same game for 3 high tackles. And once I gave the first, the rest all had to follow. So as soon as the arm came across and made contact above the chest, you're left with it's nearly a very simple situation you're in that you've got to give it. But I feel consistency is number one, and you know, you've got to make that. Be brave and make the call. I think that is the first. Once you maybe get a bit of experience, particularly for those maybe that are starting out refereeing, and maybe, you know, oh God, she's just missed time. She's caught her high. You know, you've got to be brave and make those calls.
Yeah, there's a question in there for Leon. It's a good question, so I'll throw it at you. And it's on the high tackle. Is, you know, and I suppose it's all very hypothetical, because sometimes I think in these scenarios you have to see it with your own eyes on the pitch. But does the placement of the ball come into your thinking when you're making a decision on whether it's a yellow or a deliberate red? Was the question from Leo.
I see Leo's question here. The position of the ball wouldn't come into it for me to whether it was yellow or red. For a red card, I would take speed of the tackle, or the veracity of that arm movement. You know, was the arm out 5 feet, 6 feet away before contact was made, or was it a case of an arm coming across making a tackle? Another thing I would look at is the distance travelled by the player making the foul. You know, that if they've run 10 meters and have come in and swung an arm, you know, you can sort of say, well, they've ran straight across. They're not looking to play the ball. They're looking to play the player. Now, thankfully, in ladies now, I haven't come across, more so when you watch a men's game, you would see quite a bit of that. Very rarely have I come across it. I don't think I've ever had a deliberate high tackle. Most of them in games are, and I know what Leo's trying to say, if the ball was up around here and they've gone to play the ball, I get what he's trying to say, but as soon, and I know we're coming up to talk about the tackle later, and I don't want to spoil, but the ball can only be tackled when the ball's out from the body. So when you swing an arm in across, you're leaving yourself open to be penalised, and then it's up to the referee. So I wouldn't say position of the ball, but I would definitely be looking at the speed and veracity that the player makes the challenge, and even the distance covered to get at that challenge is probably more what I'd be looking at.
Yeah. Now I know, you know, what you said there about, like, you know, coming in once the, you know, if the ball is out, it's fine, but if the ball is in, there's no real place for the hand coming in. And exactly. I think, look, maybe people have probably seen it, but I know Lynn Savage, our national development manager, you know, did I think a very short 5 or 6 minute video on it, which was really, really good. It's really clear, and I think even after tonight, might be worth sharing it again with the group that are here, maybe sending the link. But just maybe for Angela or Shane, I don't know, do any of you want to come in on that, because it is, like, I think the tackle, I think the high tackle is something that it's huge in our game, and I think it is worth discussing. So, Shane, do you want to come in there just to see Angela's muted there at the minute?
Yeah, the high tackle, as Brendan said, it is exactly those 2 words in the rule book, high tackle. And, you know, we're so used to getting, you know, webinars from National about, you know, follow-ups and how good we're doing at et cetera, regarding rules. But the high tackle, there's no other ticking for it. The high tackle is a yellow card, and you got to be very disciplined on it. Now, unfortunately, I did have a deliberate high tackle last year, and it will kind of cover maybe Leon's question as well, or Leo's question, should I say. The ball was down, ready for play. It was out from the body, but the player had got away from the girl, and there was intent, and there was speed, and there was velocity in the arm coming across, and it was one of those, what we call the clothesline, and she took her clean out of it. So they're very, very clear-cut red cards. But the yellow card one, it can be very, very tricky because, as Brendan quite rightly said, the arm is coming across maybe with the first intent is getting the ball. And the ball may be held into the body like that, and is quite rightly, there should be no hand coming in the first place. But it is just that slap across the hand. What we tend to find from time to time as well is the player might be just starting to maybe dip a shoulder to get away from a tackle, and that makes the arm come up even higher again. So it can be very, very tricky to get them right, but make sure you make the call and be consistent with it. There's no point in coming back after a game and saying, oh, that was a high tackle, I should have given it, and I didn't. You know, make the call. You know, if it's high, it's high. And
I'm going to throw that scenario at you. And I suppose I suppose you have to be there, but like our players now, and particularly at intercounty level, you know, because we can see all the games live now on television, is, you know, you see that players are so agile that when they do duck and the arm comes up, Shane, I suppose, would you have advice there maybe for referees and that specific? You know, do you talk to the player? You know, what's your, I suppose, your advice? Do you talk to the player? Do you card the player? What, I suppose, what would your view on that be?
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, you have to, you know, making a split-second decision, and that's all you have as a referee, unfortunately. But if you have the time, if you have a little bit of a doubt, and naturally enough with us, with earpieces and stuff, we can have a chat with maybe a lines person or maybe an umpire. What do you think? Have a little bit of a conversation. When it comes to club matches, you know, you're out there, you're all on your own. You're in the ocean and you're in your rowboat, and you have to make a decision fairly quickly. So as I say, intent is the first thing. You got to look at that, and you have to look, as Brendan said, at speed. And I wouldn't be necessarily, I'd be going with Brendan there. I wouldn't be looking where the ball is, because whether the ball is down at your stomach or whether the ball is up here at the side of your shoulder, the ball should not be tackled, full stop. You have to look at where the player is coming from and the speed of that arm coming across. Now, a lot of these are very lazy tackles. You know, they're just slapping at will because they have no hope of getting the ball in the first place. And a lot of them might look high, but they might just happen to brush off a shoulder or something, and they haven't made much contact. Equal to that, you have the player with the ball that does make that change of direction, and a player might have the hand up to where the ball was originally, where she was standing, and now the ball is down here and the hand has come up. So you've got to be very, very careful with that, but be sure you communicate with whatever means you have. And if you deem it's, you know, if it's high, if there's a lot of speed in it and you think there was intent, absolutely take the player, or go to the player, call her over, call her by number. That's what I would do. Green number 7, can you come here for a moment? You know, can I have your name, please? Take the name. That tackle was high. You know, it's a yellow card. It's 10 minutes in the sin bin. You know, and once you've explained it to them, and they might go, but ref, you know, I didn't mean it. You've made the call. There's no point in, you can't say, oh, I'm sorry. Actually, no, yeah, you're right. No, make the call. Be decisive, be clear, and, you know, put up the...
Yeah, I suppose, and Brendan touched that about being brave, you know, you've made your decision and you have to back your decision now, you know. So just another, I know there's 1 or 2 questions after coming in, but one's after coming in now, Shane, that is relevant, I suppose, around the high tackle, and maybe that'll bring us into tackling in general, if that's okay. So the question is that if a player in possession of the ball is trying to break through an open arm defender, and as she does, the defender arm comes high to the neck, but maybe the attacker's height and forward momentum is what causes the high tackle. You know, what would you yourself do? I suppose he's asking, would it be a tick or yellow? I suppose just, you know, have you come across that situation, Shane, and how have you dealt with that?
All the time. I mean, defenders are more or less told to stand, you know, and make themselves as big as possible and create the littlest amount of room for a player to go through. So if a player is standing there with their arms out and the attacker comes and drives straight into the arm, that's charging. That's a free against her. You know, if the player doesn't make any move. Now there's a caveat in that, insofar as the defender is standing with her arms out and suddenly she makes a move like this. Now that arm is high and there's intent in that arm making contact with the player. And in that scenario, it would be a yellow card because she's left the hand there. She's made the move across. She's caught her high. You're running a huge risk. You know, sometimes it would be better maybe to stand like that. And, you know, you're in more of a kind of a push scenario, but you can also kind of get these sorts of scenarios pushing into the chest and into the throat. They're also high tackles. It doesn't have to be the whole arm. It can be the fist, it can be the hand, you know, it can be just a push off. But certainly that one, that is a really tricky one. I'm sure Brendan and Angela will have seen this many a time as well. But if a player runs directly into a player that's standing there and doesn't make any move, they are actually charging. And I've brought this up before. I remember at a Connacht rules seminar, and you know, we even got up and we did a live demonstration on it. And you know, it's nearly like that driving through the gap. You know, two players are there and you see a gap, and you know that the gap isn't big enough for the player to go through, but the player goes through it anyway. That's charging. So it's a similar thing. You know, they see the gap, but so mind the gap as well. That's another little tip for you.
Okay, Angela, is there anything there you'd like to come in on?
Yeah, I'll just come back in and I'll pull it the other side, because I know if you're starting off refereeing, you might be doing a lot of underage matches, and then you're against height difference. And I've noticed a lot, again, the hands are coming out. You might have a tall player against a shorter player, and even though they're trying to tackle for the ball, they might end up hitting contact high. So you're into a bit of more of a man management situation where you nearly have to preempt that. You have a tall player marking a small player, they nearly have to watch where their body is and where their arms are going to be, because innocently they think they're tackling okay and that it's fair, but it could pair high to the other player that they're against. So for the underage, there's probably a little bit more management about it rather than calling them over and giving them the yellow. That's in how I've experienced it so far, especially as you're talking under 12, under 14, when there usually is that discrepancy in height. They need to learn that. They need to learn their own body position and where they're making contact. And they probably need to be taught that a little bit more from a management point of view as well. So, but yeah, especially what Shane was saying in that question, I mean, that's a good question. Players do tend to stand, and you hear the manager shout, arms out, and you can see it happening. I would talk to them afterwards and go, if you're putting those arms out like that, you need to be very careful that you're not moving or making any movement with them. They have to be aware that can cause damage as well. So yeah, it can be both sides.
Brilliant. And then just kind of as following up, I suppose generally, I suppose it didn't come in as a specific question, but just I suppose some of the participants tonight wanted us to talk about maybe tackling and the art of tackling, and from a refereeing point of view, maybe what things should referees be looking out for. So Angie, do you want to kick us off there, or?
Yeah, with regards to tackling, is it?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so the big one for me, and I'm constantly calling for it, is coming across on the arm, trying to get the ball, but they're actually not even going to get the ball because there's not a chance they are, the way they're coming across and slapping through. And that's a big one that comes up a lot for me in matches. The ball has to be out away from the body before they can even go near it. And again, even though we spend, and I'm sure managers do as well, spend a lot of time dealing with it on the pitch, it still seems to be happening anyway across the board. And I don't know if the lads find the same, but that slapping, that chopping across, trying to get onto the ball, and they're constantly making contact onto the arms, is a huge one for me anyway.
Brilliant, Angela. Brendan, do you want to come back in there then as well? Just again, because this is the kind of the tackling and the high tackling were the two big things that came in. So we're just we'll kind of see out now on this main topic of tackling. So if you could come back in there again, maybe with your own experiences, maybe. Now, I can't hear you, Brendan. You've unplugged.
Is that me back?
We have you back
Sorry.
again.
No, I was just saying tackling is basically the bread and butter of the referee. So it is. And that's where I would say 80% of our calls are made during the match is on the tackle. And I suppose there's a number of things or factors to look out for. And I think Shane sort of demonstrated it earlier. This here now is a major part of how girls from a very young age to senior level are coached, that this frontal push is a tackle. And it's clearly written in the rules, a frontal push is a free against. So, and they're coached from a very early age to get the hands on first to slow a player down. So that's one of the first things you see. And even if you go and watch girls warm up in warm-ups for a match, they'll pair off and you'll see them going up and down the pitch, pushing each other as part of their warm-up, getting ready for the match. And I'd be sitting looking going, the coach is actually warming them up by showing them how to foul. And it happens in, I would say, nearly every warm-up up and down the country. The second thing I would also talk about, you'll always hear near hand tackles. Near hand. She's tackling with her near hand. But you've got to explain, if the ball is into the chest, it doesn't matter what hand you're tackling with, the hand can't go in. The hand can't go in. So it's all about where the position of the ball. Now, to me, and we've always been told, if the ball is out where a girl is holding it to the side to protect it from somebody on the other side, that ball's open and can be tackled. It's when it's in here in the chest. And the other thing, even to look at, and Shane was talking about it there, the charge. We would talk about. I know myself and a few of my fellow referees would talk about. You can't go through the girl. You've got to go around her. So just to look in the fouls, in tackles of players putting themselves in front of another player, that kind of charge tackle, or when a player with the ball runs directly, or when a defender steps across, trying to make it look as if she's tackling with her hands out, but steps across. And we're coming into that charge, which they use as, oh, I'm tackling. So it's a couple of things to look out for. In particularly the frontal push, whether it's near hand or not near hand, if the ball's in the chest. And definitely defenders, hands out, stepping across players as if, oh, what a great tackle I'm making. She's just run into me. So they're definitely key things to look out for refereeing, and they happen in every game. Should it be under 12, right up to inter-county level? Every game.
Brilliant. Okay. So Shane, you would take the high tackle. I have a couple of good questions after coming in, but just, was there anything, Shane, that you want to come in on there just in relation to the tackle? You know, you touched on a bit before I go to some of the Q&As after coming in.
Yeah, the Angela and Brendan have hit the nail on the head. I mean, the scourge of the game is just that constant slapping of the arm. They're making absolutely no attempt whatsoever to play that ball. That is a real,
and that's a really good question actually that came in. I might just bring it in this point, is that Janie had just asked, like, I suppose maybe it was for advice, and it's hard for us probably as referees, Shane, but it's on at underage level in particular, maybe that, you know, there's a lot of referees seeing that maybe girls, particularly under 10, under 12, are constantly slapping at the ball. I suppose, how much of it do you let it slide, and is there anything I suppose referees can do to help that part of the game, Shane?
Yeah, look, I mean, at underage level, you know, I would take the approach as underage. You know, you just have to be nearly a coach and a referee at the same time. You have to exactly tell them what they're doing, and once you've told them in the first instance that, you know, you cannot slap down on the arms or slap on the ball, tell them exactly what the rule is. Quote the rule to them. You know, when the ball is held into the body, you cannot touch the player or the ball.
And really, at under 10 level as well, Shane, they are really only learning the game. And us referees, like, you know, we're not the big bad wolf. We're kind of nearly a friend for the under 10s. I sometimes think, Shane, we're there nearly as a teacher. Where, you know, would you suggest maybe if there was a gap, let's say in an under 10 Go Games blitz, would you think that something could be done there from a referee point of view? Help maybe if there was a particular player, or maybe talk to the coaches, or just maybe touch on that maybe a little bit for me.
Yeah, and actually, I've done actually quite a bit of under 10 and under 12 this year at development level, and what I found was really, really helpful, and this might help some of our referees that are on tonight, is to actually ask the players why I blew the whistle. to involve them that way. I would have talked to both teams at the start of before the game at all, and kind of show them a few of the things. What can you do and what can't you do in terms of tackling, and then involve them in the game. And when you say, okay, why did I blow that whistle, girls? And they might go, oh, she touched it on the ground, or the ball is in the body. And once they start to understand why, then you have them engaged, and that's something that worked really well at underage for me. But now it doesn't work at adult, to be honest with you, because it's win at all costs, get the ball as no matter how you get it. But look, the rule is there. The ball in the body, it cannot be tackled. It drives people nuts. I know it does, managers and players alike. And sometimes that little slap on the arm can be seen as a very, very minute foul, but it's a deliberate act. Now, if there's a player soloing up the field or down the field, whatever you want to call it, and there's a defender running alongside her, and she's making a genuine effort to try and flick that ball away with the open hand, and she kind of accidentally catches the arm of the player, well, I wouldn't be too severe on that kind of thing, because it's not deliberate. But this continuously slapping, and Brendan mentioned about the near hand tackle. I don't think you'll go through any of the rule book and find near hand tackling. It's nowhere. You can tackle with both hands. It's a skill. Near hand tackle is a skill. The reason we teach the near hand tackle is that you're not putting your arm around the player, because what's going to happen is the other player is going to grab it and pull it in, and she's holding me, ref. No, she's holding my arm. So you're teaching the near hand tackle so that you're not engaging your body in around the player. And but it's nowhere in the rule book. You can tackle with both hands as long as it's open hands.
Yeah, and just touching on that help, particularly if I go specifically to like that 9 or 10-year-old girl who was realistically only learning that game, and you're saying there, like if you feel like, because it could be a couple of very young referees on tonight, they're making a genuine attempt. Maybe you don't blow it because you feel as the referee, you're feeling it is that she's not hurt anyone, she has, and it's just once, and maybe she didn't get the ball, and you decide to let that go. But would you suggest maybe that if there was an opportunity, maybe you would talk to that player, or a couple of players if you see it, or maybe the coach, or I suppose what's your own gut feeling on that? Because
I would generally have a sore throat after coming off an under-10s or an under-12s match, and the whole time talking through the match, telling them, constantly engaging with them, and like you said, with a tackle like that, you have to let them play football too, or they're never going to learn. And like if there's an advantage situation and the foul has occurred, absolutely go back and tell that player, you can't be slapping on the arm. You have to make an attempt at the ball. You can tackle the ball, and that's it. But when it's out from the body, and that's really it. And I would bring in, at underage, I know there's a lot of referees here now that are probably refereeing at the Go Games level, under 10s, under 12s, maybe under 14s. It's no harm at all to bring in the under 10s and under 12s before the game. I do it all the time. It makes things easier on everybody, because you have new managers. AGMs happen every year. Their managers are pulled from the back of the room, and suddenly you have a brand new person that's involved in the ladies football team that might never have never coached a ladies football team, and they're suddenly here on the pitch now with the team, and they half know the rules and they half don't, and they're still wondering what is and what isn't. So talk to them, engage them, bring in the managers and talk to the teams and demonstrate it. I'd be down on the ground, lying on the ground, down on one knee, showing them that they can play the ball away before the match. And you're coaching them, and you're telling them how it works.
Yeah, and I suppose we're kind of specifically talking this was because the question came in originally with the under 10 player. But say, like, we're not saying here that referees should be going out there coaching the sideline at the players. We're talking about if there is an under 10, if there's an opportunity to help coach, we're going to, but we're not stopping up the game to do that. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, that's absolutely fair.
Yeah,
let them play. They have to play. They'll never ever learn how to play football if they don't play. If you're constantly stopping the match, they'll learn nothing. It's just going to be a game full of free kicks, and you need to get them developed. Never ever be afraid of making a mistake. I would always tell your children that. Never be afraid of making a mistake. You know, that's the only way you're going to learn. But for us referees, I think it is important that we have that kind of coaching instinct to try and help them, that when we come again next week to the same team, that they're not making the same mistakes, because you've kind of not done your job either in a sense. I know it's not your job to coach them. It's the manager's job to coach them and teach them the rules. However, we facilitate the rules. And I think any little bit of help at all, like Brendan, Angela, at the top inter-county level, we're talking to those players. These are the best footballers in the country. We're talking to them the whole time, you know, and, you know, we're learning off them, they're learning off us. And I think the more communication you can have, the better.
Brilliant.
And across there, Shane, what I've also found, especially with the underage, is if they're committing a foul, you explain what's happened, but then you also ask them what you're looking for. What picture are you looking for? And what I've noticed as well with the younger ones, if you see them doing it right the next time, comment on it, say thanks very much.
Praise them.
See that you've actually made an effort there. And sometimes that's enough to get a buy-in, and then they remember that because you've identified, they've learned. So that can be enough to bring them on through the rest of the match. And normally they rarely foul after that. So especially for the young ones, adults too, it can work with adults as well, that sometimes it just can be identified that you've noticed that they've listened to you, so that can be enough.
Okay, Angela, well, I still have you there because I was going to come into the next question. We're kind of wrapping up at this point, but I have there's a lot of questions come in, but I have maybe 2 or 3 questions more that maybe I might try and take and pose to you. So Angela, you might take us or lead us out in this one, and if the lads would like to come in at any stage, please do. But it was just, again, around, I suppose, just kind of following on, is around advice. You know, I suppose it just came in here with younger girls, like, would you have any advice on the RF parents brigade, you know, brigade? And, you know, it happens in all sports, right across the world. So I suppose, have you anything there? I mean, maybe at this point you don't hear it. So maybe just is there anything there you'd like to come in on there, Angela?
You know, I suppose you do hear it, and it is unfortunate, and it can be mostly parents, and it can be a lot of parents that obviously get upset, or some decision goes against their child, or there's an injury against their child, which is a big one. Depending on what it is or what's been said, I have stopped the match, and I have called the captain over and said, this person that's shouting in is from your side. I'm not shouting at them. I don't expect that. Could you please talk to your manager and get it dealt with, please, as the match continues? And for me, every time that works. So I don't know if the lads have felt any different. I don't allow it. I don't like it, and I don't really think there's a place for parents running shouting in. We're trying to get away from that. If it happened on a different situation or on a street, you wouldn't accept it either. And for me, I would always just acknowledge it. But it's nearly, again, you're putting responsibility back on the team of who that person is with. They don't want to hear it either, normally. And that's how I have always dealt with it, to be honest. And it always seems to have worked. So again, I don't know if the lads have anything different, but
I think, I often think myself, from my own experience, I think once, you know, whatever goes on, as long as that doesn't start creeping into the players themselves, and I suppose as soon as that happens, then you've got to nip that in the bud. But we'll just maybe kind of go back to a question that came in actually a while ago. Now, we may not get to, there's a lot of questions after flooding in, so we won't be able to take them at all, but we will certainly try and maybe take them out for the lead session on the similar topics again in January. So that was just maybe Brendan, I'll go back to you. We haven't heard from you in a while. Report just asked the question: if there's a player swinging her arms backwards as both players are traveling in the same direction.
If a player swings the arm back while going for the ball and catches the player, well, technically, or not even technically, she has struck the player with her hand, which is a red card offence. And if I'm not mistaken, it happened this year maybe it was one of the live games where a player, I think it was maybe Dublin, a player running for the ball swung the arm back, trying to get the player away. didn't mean to, but caught her in the face, putting the arm back, trying to keep the player at bay, swung the arm, caught the player in the face, and was correctly red carded for striking an opponent with a hand. So again, when players, we were chatting earlier about, good tackling, bad tackling, and so on, and players are responsible for how they use their bodies and the contact they make. So if a player does swing an arm out, or Shane and Ange chatted about, if they swing an arm across a body, they leave themselves open to making a high challenge. If a player swings their arm behind them, they have a chance of striking the player. Whether they mean it or not doesn't really come into it. If they make contact, particularly if it's up in the face, it's definitely striking an opponent and would be a red card.
Okay, and we'll go back to you, Shane. Possibly, I think maybe we'll take this maybe as the I think it's going to be the last question. It's probably going back to the tackle again or something similar, standing up or standing off your player. I suppose, would the hands out by defender not be seen as holding up an attacker?
Ooh,
you see, and I suppose sometimes when questions come in, Shane, like,
yeah.
somebody has a view of what they mean by that question. So I suppose.
No, I'm trying to visualize something that I can, like, I mean, if the player puts her hands up, when, as the player is approaching her, yeah, there's probably an intent there to try and hold her off, and obviously holding is a free. But if there's 10 meters between the attacker and the defender has planted herself and she's there, solid as a rock, the hands out, then the onus is on the player with the ball to make the attempt to go around the player to avoid that crash. There's no room there. If she runs directly straight into the arm, she's charging into the player. your arm is still part of your body. You don't just have to charge into the chest. You can charge into the back. You can charge into the shoulder. You can charge into the arm. I mean, if someone runs straight into the arm and the arm is out, you could dislocate your shoulder. But equally, you could get your head taken off at the same time. So as Brendan said, you have a responsibility there to know what's good. Oh, there's no room here. I'll go in under her arm or I'll go around her arm. But equally, and I know the question is about the holding up of a player. I think myself that I would agree with the person that asked that question, that yes, it could be seen as holding the player if there's a shorter distance and then the player puts the arms up deliberately to kind of stop her going through, that she's made the move. So the foul would be on the defender at that stage. It's nearly like you're standing there and then the player makes a sidestep just as the player is going around. She's initiated the contact. There's the foul. The same thing I think would apply in that instance. That would be my thinking on it. She might be standing with her arms down and then just at the last second, she puts her hands up like this and holds the player off. So I think it's a good question. It's one of those that you have to be very, very sure of, but they are tricky. They are very tricky, but it's a good question.
Well, fantastic. Look, what we're going to do is we said it was going to be about the hour. We're just kind of a little bit over that. So just, I suppose, first of all, I want to thank Brendan, Shane and Angela. They have absolutely massive experience. And I think it's lovely to actually just come on and have a discussion on the rules as well. And I hope, I suppose, that the people on tonight got a lot from it. I think anytime I come on to something, you have to say, well, if I only take one thing from tonight. So hopefully you've all taken something from it. But I just want to lastly thank the people who took time out tonight to come join us. Really appreciate it. We'll be having another one of these sessions, similar one, another deep dive into rules, maybe in other areas, maybe, and that'll be kind of coming up in February. But between now and then, there's lots of webinars, and I just have it up here in front of me. We have a really good webinar coming up on the 22nd of November, and that's the next one aimed at our referees, and it's around the referee performance analysis. At national level, we've had somebody working with our national referees, and there's been some really, really good findings, and I think learning is going to come from that. So I think it will be an exciting one to get in on. We have Joe Turley coming with us on that day with myself. So I'll get an email out maybe to all the participants that are here tonight. But again, just finally, thank you to participants, and thank you to our fantastic referees. You've been absolutely amazing. Thank you, and I hope you all got something out tonight.
Thanks, everybody.